A reading from the prophet Isaiah. Hear the word of the Lord. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise among you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together, they come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nation shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall come over you. The young camels of Midian and Ephah, all of Sheba will come. They shall bring gold and frankincense and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Amen.
They said, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what the prophet wrote. You, Bethlehem, land of Judah, by no means are you least among the rulers of Judah, because from you will come one who governs, who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi, and found out from them the time when the star had first appeared. he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search carefully for this child. When you found him, report to me so that I too may go and honor him." When they heard the king, they went. And the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them, until it stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with Mary, his mother. Falling to their knees, they honored him. Then they opened their treasure chests and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And because they were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their own country by another route. When the Magi had departed, an angel from the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod will soon search for the child in order to kill him." Joseph got up, and during the night took the child and his mother to Egypt. He stayed there until Herod died. This fulfilled what the Lord had spoken through the prophet, "I have called my son out of Egypt." When Herod knew the Magi had fooled him, he grew very angry. He sent soldiers to kill all the male children in Bethlehem and in all the surrounding territory who were 2 years old and younger, according to the time that he had learned from the Magi. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I am not particularly good at using GPS or Google Maps or MapQuest or whatever your program may call it. I used to love to page through the Rand McNally Road Atlas that we kept tucked into the pocket of the passenger side door in the car. And I have very fond memories of many, many youth mission trips using a triptych from AAA with all the separate pages spiral bound that link to one another. But all of that is long gone. Now it's on my phone, or it's built into the dashboard on a screen in your car. I think part of the problem is, for me, at least somewhat, a trust issue. Does that computer-generated voice really know where I need to go? And how does it know the way that I want to get there? My kids, a couple years ago, made me get this cool holder for my phone that clips right into the air vent on the dash, so they don't have to hold the phone and interpret the directions for me anymore. But inevitably, when I don't get the information soon enough, when I don't trust the directions completely, and I turn the wrong way, or I take the wrong exit, or I don't get over in time to exit, then I get the dreaded indication that my GPS is rerouting. Rerouting, it says. Rerouting, rerouting. And I'm thinking today about the Magi and the rest of this Epiphany story. I'm thinking about how it's all about rerouting. It happened, of course, in not a good and happy time, but in Herod's time. And Herod's time was a time of great injustice and much suffering. Brutal King Herod, after all, was that most dangerous kind of powerful person, an insecure and fearful leader, eaten up with worry about maintaining his power, his place, and his comfort, all of his advantages. Protecting all those things can demand a lot of energy from a person, you know, especially since Herod wasn't a real king. He was just a puppet of the empire, the hated and oppressive Roman Empire. So just imagine then how thrilled this fake king must have been on that day when a band of wise ones from the east showed up at his palace, parked their camels out front perhaps, loaded down with treasure, and they came in and asked him, the king, for directions to the new king of the Jews. They were asking for directions, of course, for a route, even though they'd followed that star for some length of time. How do we get to the child? Do we know the route? But before we get to the route, we probably should consider who these strangers were, the ones seeking him, these magi, wise men. They're much more than mere decoration, an addition to our nativity scene out in the commons. Now, scholars are divided as to their roles and their country of origin, with opinions varying widely, from Zoroastrian priests to astrologers, to scholars, to magicians even. But what is agreed on by most is that these magi, or wise men, must have been among the Gentiles, who might have been influenced by the Jews who remained beyond in Babylon after the rest of their community returned home to Israel when the exile ended. So perhaps, having been tutored in sensing the goodness of the one true God, these magi have been trained to raise their eyes to the horizon of God's activity in the world, trained by their association, in fact, by the Babylonian Jewish community. If you recall the prophecy that August just read from Isaiah about lifting up our eyes and looking around, about the wealth of the nations coming to Israel, you see where some of this came from. Now, how have these strangers found their way, or gotten this close anyway, to the new King of the Jews? They seem to be sincere and persistent in their search, but actually we might say they weren't entirely wise, despite their experience and worldliness. You could almost say they seemed somewhat naive, as they didn't anticipate any difficulty in inquiring of King Herod about the birth of his next rival. But they do have the sense to know that they don't have all the answers, which is perhaps its own kind of wisdom, right? They know that they need help. They're looking for the route on this long, hope-filled quest. They've dropped everything, you see. They've left their country and the comforts of home to set out for this distant land, no matter how far. Their guide, that spectacular natural phenomenon, is a bright star, a new star that they observed at its rising and has led them almost, but not quite all the way, to this Messiah. So they need some help rerouting. Well, where would one expect to find a king? In addition to that bright star in the sky, the Magi also have common sense to guide them there. And if you're looking for a king, common sense would, after all, lead you, once you got to the big city, right to the palace. That's where kings live, right? And they get to the palace, and there sits King Herod, who already senses, perhaps, that he's the power that was instead of the powers that be. So he reacts in fear to the birth of a baby who brings good news for the world. You see, for Herod, this was not good news at all, this was bad news. And he turns to his chief priests and legal experts and scribes, the religious establishment, the power elite, to help him figure out where this dangerous new king might be. The scholars put their heads together, did a quick Bible study under a whole lot of pressure, because could there have been a more important question? But they don't come up with the same text we read from Isaiah today. No, instead, they bring to Herod a surprising, counterintuitive, maybe even dangerous answer. Against all their scholarly assumptions, and perhaps in spite of their deepest hopes, after all, who wouldn't want Jerusalem to be at the center of it all, they find the answer that they provide to Herod in two other books out of the Old Testament, the prophet Micah and the second book of Samuel. The one who is to rule, the gentle shepherd king, will come from the most unexpected of places, off the beaten path, out of the limelight, a little village, Bethlehem. 9 miles, Walter Brueggemann says. The wise men have miscalculated by only 9 miles, but what a long 9 miles it is. From the halls of power and glory from the powers that be, or should we say the powers that had been, to what God is doing in Bethlehem out there on the margins. King Herod survives, even thrives, on secrecy and deception. So he calls for the Magi in a hush-hush meeting behind closed doors, and he pretends to be on the same page with all of them. He tells them Bethlehem is where they will probably find this new king, and then he makes an innocent request. He says, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you found him, bring me word, so that I can also go and honor him." Of course, that would happen, right? A power-mad and insecure leader might go to a little baby and kneel down and honor him. What a swell guy this Herod is. All the right words come out of his mouth, but cruelty and murder are what are living in his heart. We know this. We know this because we know what Herod will do with this knowledge. We've heard the story of the innocents. All the little boys in the town of Bethlehem and the surrounding areas under the age of 2. The story that tells us so graphically just what fear and insecurity, what arrogance and a greed for power can actually do. But fortunately, after the wise men reach Bethlehem and find the child and are filled with joy and offer him their gifts and pay him honor, then they're warned. They're warned by a dream to return home by a different route. It's as if the GPS suddenly kicks in and says to them, rerouting, rerouting, rerouting. Friends, there are many ways that we find our way to God. To the little baby who was born King of Kings. Nature, the stars, the sky, all of that does indeed point us to the glory of God. Whether for you that's up at camp, at your cabin at the lake, on a beach, or in the middle of the desert. But also the care of God, the presence of God in our lives, that too points to the glory. But we need the Bible as well. And we need personal experience. And we need the community that helps us understand all these ways to God. So that then we, like the Magi, can be drawn to the one whom we seek and will worship. Thomas Long says that the world is full of stars in the east. These are events in nature and personal experiences and history that points to the mystery of God. But the Bible helps us recognize these moments, these holy moments, for what they truly are, to see God's face in them. Without Scripture, I think we might be like the wise men, the Magi, trying to figure out the deeper meaning of what they had seen and experienced and what to do about it. So we think together about the Bible as an element of our own roadmap, our GPS. And we think about the community of faith around us as the help we need in searching it and interpreting it. You know, there's plenty of rerouting still to come. Joseph is rerouted to Egypt with Mary and the child to escape Herod's fury when he discovers the Magi have fooled him. And the new year, perhaps, will reroute most of us into a new vision for this church, for our ministry together, maybe even for our lives. Because we want to find ourselves in this story, too. To hear what happened so long ago, to connect our lives to it. We want to feel ourselves, we who are strangers from this distant land, far off time. We want to feel ourselves kneeling with those wise ones from the east, in awe and in joy for the gift before us. And we want to know how God will still be at work in the world that we live in today. How God will still speak to us as God spoke through the prophets, through dreams and angels and that bright shining star so long ago. It's moving on Epiphany to hear of 3 foreigners traveling a long, hard way because they had some inkling, just an inkling, of something very important happening far away in a distant land. I wonder if something inside them might have been restless or upset, might have been hungry for understanding. Despite the reputation of the East as the place of wisdom and learning, there was something these ones still needed to find. Perhaps then, we can recognize that yearning in ourselves as well. That need to lean into a new and different way, a renewed energy, whatever it is to come. Maybe we'll pay close attention to our dreams, to those still small voices, to the GPS in each of us that is even now rerouting us, rerouting to something, anything that will fill us with joy. May it be so for each one of us this day, this new year, and always.